Welcome everyone! We might not be the biggest fighting game tournament in the world, but we are a podcast where two guys talk video games. So welcome to the Impact Factor. The Impact Factor is what happens when two scientists and two best friends get together to talk about video games. My name is Alex Samocha, and I am joined this week, as I am every week here on the Impact Factor, by the guy who, unfortunately, is still making very little progress in Demon's Souls. But maybe fortunately for me, my co-host, Charles Fliss.
Hey man, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing alright this morning.
Well, I've been spending my night immersed in the world of Demon's Souls, so if I'm a little bit out of it, or a little bit jumpy, or, just no sudden movements over there.
Alright.
See, you got me just right there. This is why I'm hilarious to watch horror movies. I jump at everything.
Oh, yeah. We gotta do that at some point. So, welcome everyone to the podcast. We want to start this podcast out a little bit differently than we have normally. There's some very sad news over the weekend. We found out, I believe it was on Sunday, that the president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata, has passed away at the very young age of 55. Really, I first want to say that definitely here at the Impact Factor, we love and respect the work that Satoru Iwata contributed to the world of gaming. You hear nothing, sure, he was a president and he's this executive figure, but you hear nothing but praise and admiration and well wishes and only the best about people's experiences with Satoru Iwata. Obviously, Fliss and I personally haven't gotten to speak with him or meet with him, but he really came off in the E3s of a couple years ago, and as well as the Nintendo Directs, as this really earnest, passionate individual who really steered Nintendo through a really long history of ups and downs, but certainly a lot of successes too. He is behind a lot of the stuff that everyone knows and loves about Nintendo. And I could just say, personally, for us too, he definitely will be sorely missed.
Yeah, it's a huge loss for the gaming community. It's a huge loss for the gaming industry, and of course for everyone in his immediate friends and family. I'm sure it's even more impactful. But he will be missed, and he gave us so much as gamers to enjoy. He brought so much joy to all of us, both in his Nintendo Directs and in the work he did as a programmer and in keeping the ship afloat at Nintendo, which, as much as I like to complain about Nintendo, has brought me a lot of personal joy. So I'll always be grateful to him for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, you would expect in certain industries to have these executives that are so detached and very businesslike, but Satoru Iwata has roots as a programmer, and not only that, not only a programmer but a phenomenal one. His work can be seen in Earthbound, where he kind of came in at the last second and made a non-functional game work. One of the things he was best known for is, and probably people's, Pokemon fans especially, their favorite installment in the franchise, Pokemon Gold and Silver. The team, this is just some anecdotes that I've read about him, but the team needed to, for anyone who's played, you start the game in Johto region, but kind of the cool thing about it is once you beat it, you go back to the original region of the first game, Kanto, and play against all the bosses there, all the gym leaders and stuff there. But by the time that the team had finished the Johto region, there was no space left on the 2 megabyte cartridge that was the Game Boy cartridge to fit the entire region. And so Satoru Iwata came in and basically worked magic and fit an entire second area of the game onto that cartridge, kind of miraculously. Another, again, as a last story of how, kind of giving his credit as this, really passionate individual who works and knows about games. He essentially wrote the battle system for Pokemon from scratch for Pokemon Stadium on the N64 without any reference documents to what the original team did. So he's just an unbelievably talented individual. He's, I don't want to quote it exactly because I'm going to get it wrong, but he says, on paper he's the president of a company. In his mind, he's a game developer, but in his heart, he's a gamer, just like all the rest of us. And I think that's important, and I think we can see that in some companies today, but I think Satoru Iwata was one of the first, one of the biggest, and certainly when we talk a lot about impact here on the Impact Factor, and there are few individuals who've had a larger impact on gaming as a whole than Satoru Iwata.
We always talk about what you put into the world, and he brought a lot of people up with him. He also, as that leader of Nintendo, when the company was having trouble making ends meet and was posting losses. He temporarily halved his own salary, which I don't think any of us can even begin to imagine an American CEO, or even many, many, many other CEOs in every country, especially in Japan, taking that kind of hit to their own personal finances to demonstrate that their solidarity with their workers and with their consumers.
Yeah. And it's just sad, and I think, just, again, not to dive too deep into the personal kind of goings about of Satoru Iwata, but we learned a couple years ago that he had a growth removed from his bile duct, and that's indicative of cancer, and usually one of the more aggressive ones. By the time you discover it, it's metastasized elsewhere. So again, for anyone who sees this, it's just not. I'm sure nothing could be done, but obviously there are forms of cancer that early detection can help and prevent, and so just be aware that that's something you need to start thinking about as you get into your 50s, and just early detection is some of the things that a lot of the industry that I work in. It's not early detection and using biomarkers to detect tumors early is something a lot of people are working on. But obviously, certainly nothing could be done about this, and it's just sad to see him go. And that this was his last E3, and the last thing he did as president was apologize for the disappointing E3. So I think it's always important to remember the discourse you have. As much as, again, Fliss and I criticize it, Satoru Iwata and Nintendo have done a lot of good. And so let's just maybe reserve a couple seconds of silence here for Satoru Iwata. Let's try to go on to something a little bit more positive. It's very sad news. It struck me harder than I expected it to over the weekend. So, So the Impact Factor is where I bring my perspectives as a biomedical scientist and combine them with, and sometimes against, Fliss's social scientist worldview to have great discussions about video games. A little bit aside from, obviously, the tragic news of Satoru Iwata's passing, we've got some great stuff to talk about. So let's get it started right away with some news and views.
News and views.
In an academic journal, News and Views collects the best of recent events and findings. Here, Fliss and I scour through the week in video game news to find the stories with the biggest impact. Fliss, what do you think was the most impactful story from the world of gaming?
Well, this week, I'm once again going to be talking about fighting games because, what? Ken in Street Fighter V? Well, that's not a surprise to anybody, but whoa, who is this guy that they're calling Ken? He looks totally different. Like, the red, jumpsuit is the same, the blonde hair is the same, but everything else is different. Amazing. I'm so excited to see a non-cloned version of Ken come into this game.
Yeah. So the way they introduced him was that, Ken is back. Like, they showed this little teaser, I believe it was San Diego Comic-Con, and Ken kind of walked on the screen. But nobody knew. Like, at first, people thought this was a new character just by how radically redesigned his character model looks. But then, once you saw, like, a flaming kick, people were kind of like, okay, that's probably Ken.
Oh, that's Ken. Yeah, that's Ken.
Yeah, so he looks way different now. So the team behind Street Fighter V said he's not a Shoto. And so for anyone who's not, like, in the Street Fighter milieu like Fliss and I are, a Shoto is, like, the made-up martial art style that Ryu and Ken famously used in, like, the first games. The series has kind of expanded to have a lot of Shoto-like fighters. Some of the indicative things of Shotos are having, like, Hadoukens and Shoryukens, so that's kind of, like, the thing. You've expanded to have, like, Ryu, Ken, Sean, Akuma, Evil Ryu. I mean, there's a lot.
Akuma Matata.
Yeah, right. And so all of those have, like, the Shoto style. So they announced that he's not a Shoto here. We're not sure where this falls in the timeline, but it's seeming increasingly like this is probably, like, the furthest in the Street Fighter timeline we've ever gotten, with how, different a lot of characters are. Especially with M. Bison having gray hair and everything. And so now he's, like, just been described as a rebel. Ken is a rebel. He's kind of abandoned his Shoto ways. He's doing stuff, and yeah, he looks really cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of getting more different styles of fighting into these games, and so no matter how much of his classic gameplay he retains, just the fact that they're moving him away from being a clone, right? Because originally Ken was just kind of like the other Ryu, right? Just did not, not as extreme as Mortal Kombat, right? Where you just all they did was change the colors on the ninjas, but he's originally a clone, and so non-clone characters are awesome. And you look at games like Smash 4, where there are a million clone characters.
Yeah,
it's so nice to see a company moving away from that. And I know as fighting game fans, we're always clamoring for more characters in each game. Oh, there aren't enough characters. But I think I would rather have fewer characters and just do... If you're going to make a clone, just make me a nicer skin or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, but he... For as much as they kind of him and hawed about him not being a Shoto, he still has a Shoryuken. It looks like he still has some sort of spinning kick. Looks like he probably has fireballs too. So he still retains a lot of the moves, but a lot has changed. He seems to be like a lot more like of aggressive kind of melee, kind of mix-up fighter. He seems like he's got a lot of good jumping options. And just from a design standpoint, we talked about it earlier, he looks totally different. So now instead of his normal kind of long locks, he's got kind of a top pony and two little hair, like, bangs on front that kind of look like bananas.
Those are antenna hairs, dude.
Antenna, yeah, they look like antenna.
That's no, I'm serious.
That's the official word. Okay, that's the official.
Yeah, that's what they're called because you see them in anime all the time.
So he's his antenna hairs that look like bananas.
They do look
his
like
face
bananas.
actually looks.
Hey man, you got bananas on your face.
I know he really does. And also, oh yeah, his face is kind of messed up. I don't know. His face is kind of ugly. I don't know if it's the system or the what. Maybe it's an early model of him, but his face.
He's been taking punches for what?
He's been taking them for
ever since the release of the first game. So.
Taking him for a long time though. But he looks super fun, and like everyone who's played him is really hyped, really excited about him. I love seeing new characters, but there's more. There's more from this reveal at San Diego Comic-Con. This isn't all we got, right, Fliss?
No, that's right. There's even more. It looks like we're going to get a new character because they teased it right at the end, just in case you hadn't had enough.
Yeah, so I had a couple flashes of a character at the end, and it kind of set at least the fighting game community, who Fliss and I follow, ablaze. Because it kind of looked like it might be E Honda, for all those, again, who don't know. He's that big Japanese sumo wrestler guy that can like use a lot of hands fast, the 100 hands technique. Some people thought it was a redesign of Blanca, that green guy with like electricity shooting out. Some people even suspected it might be Akuma, on a redesign of Akuma because of some features. But honestly, the more that's been revealed, and obviously you have all those like internet sleuths lightening the image, increasing the contrast or whatever, it looks to be a pretty different character. It's this wide-faced, wide-nosed, kind of lighter-skinned person who has a tattoo on his face. It looks like he has black kind of dreadlocks, and I don't know, he looks really intense. So there's been a lot of speculation. I am in the camp that this is a brand new character for Street Fighter, because we know, I think the team has said that there's going to be 4 new characters who have never been in a Street Fighter game before. So that's pretty exciting. I love new characters. As much as I love all the established, a Street Fighter game wouldn't be a Street Fighter game without Ryu and Chun-Li, and there's several other characters, in my opinion, who kind of have to be in a Street Fighter game, but certainly Ryu and Chun-Li are among them. But no, it looks cool. Fliss, do you have any guesses of what you might think this character might be?
I mean, I want E Honda back, so there's a part of me that hopes this is E Honda. For one thing, I love playing grapplers.
Yeah, he's got those good command grabs.
Yeah, command grabs are great. They're my favorite part of Street Fighter. They're my favorite part of a lot of fighting games.
It's pretty satisfying.
That's why I play King in Tekken, even though he's not good. He's just got really fun command grabs.
I like King. fine.
I mean, he's cool. He's just not he's not a top tier character.
No. But
anyway, I think it's a new character. That's my actual prediction here. I agree with you. I think it's a new character. I'm excited about that. The more new characters, the better.
So my speculation, among others, I mean, I guess I didn't come up with it first, but I agree with some of the speculation. One of the big deals they made about with announcing the Street Fighter V beta, which is coming to the PS4 soon, end of July, was that there's going to be a new playable stage, and it's some like mountainous stage set in New Zealand. And so they made sure to specify that it was New Zealand, so there's like sheep in the background and other stuff like that. And so it got people thinking, myself included, that this new character might be a Maori fighter, might be a Maori warrior, which would be awesome, because we haven't seen any representation from New Zealand, certainly. I don't even know if there's an Australian character. I could be wrong about that. because there's a lot of characters that like have been in one small game and then never seen again.
Right.
But yeah, so that'd be really cool if there was a Maori warrior. You could do like the haka at like the start of the match. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that if it is a Maori character, then it's going to be like a terrible, really racist representation.
Street Fighter does not have a good history of being culturally sensitive at all. I mean, we're not even going to get into T-Hawk here.
Oh my gosh, yes, T-Hawk, Blanca. I mean, just the list goes on.
Like Zangief and
I mean, the thing about Zangief, right, is that like as Americans, we are just as guilty of that representation of Russians.
Yeah, see any action movies from like the 80s.
Or even more recently, like just any action movie that has a Russian in it.
You're going to have that big bruiser, like Ubermensch looking kind of Russian character.
I crush man's skull between thighs like sparrow's egg.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But Zangief's best moment obviously coming, as just quoted, from Wreck-It Ralph. Because I say to myself, Zangief, just because you are a bad guy doesn't mean you are a bad guy.
Oh, Wreck-It Ralph.
You've seen that.
I've seen it. It's pretty good. They're making a second one.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It's great.
I don't know. We'll get into a discussion that might actually Wreck-It Ralph might be applicable for in our perspectives this week.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Please be excited. I'm just gonna keep using that. I'm gonna keep using it.
I'm glad that's sticking around.
So Evo again. We'll sprinkle talk of this throughout the episode. But Evo Evolution 2015, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world, what I referenced, in the beginning of the opening of this episode, is this weekend. I would be completely surprised. Like, I fully expect more gameplay and probably at least one new character reveal at Evo. It's gotta be.
I certainly hope so.
It's the biggest. Everyone who cares about fighting games, at least in some small regard, is probably at least knows that Evo is happening this weekend. So I think it's a great place for them to perhaps reveal a new character and maybe like reveal another character who's like returning. Like it'd be nice to see, like you said, E Honda and then this new character, or maybe Zangief and this new character or something like that.
Yeah, or even somebody more recent, like Jury and this new character.
Oh yeah, I'd like to see Jury. She was fun.
I would be just real fast.
Yeah.
I would be really excited if the new character is from Australia or New Zealand, because I think it would be great to see more of the Asia Pacific in Street Fighter, just because that's the whole region around Japan, right? So we've already got like our Ryu and our Chun-Li, and we had Jury in the last game, and so anyone else we can get from the Pacific Islands would be awesome.
Yeah. Because they've pulled a little bit from Thailand and stuff too, with like Sagat, and I think Adon is around that area too. But they really haven't pulled much from Pacific Islands, so it'd be cool. Just because this isn't my story, but just to kind of expand on your story a little bit, some details have come out about this Street Fighter V beta, which is again, if you pre-order Street Fighter V on Amazon or a couple other retailers, in the US at least, you can get guaranteed access to the beta on PS4. It's I think a 5-day beta. I'm still tempted to pre-order just so I can try out this beta.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
With some detail.
Don't do it.
Some details have emerged. Basically, we've talked about this before, and this could get really deep, but essentially, it, again, highlights that Capcom is trying to make this, on the surface, a little bit more accessible. Less about execution and more about, and execution is, again, pulling off very hard to, actually physically input combos. So less about that and more about knowing when to do a combo, when not to. It's a lot about spacing and footsies, so feeling out your opponent and being able to punish when they attack you when they shouldn't. And then I think one of the kind of, again, coolest things from this little information leak, as someone who's kind of had their hands on with Street Fighter V, is that the tightest frame link, again, we've talked about this, I think, 2 episodes ago, the tightest frame link that they discovered in several hours with the Street Fighter V beta was 3 frames, which, again, is 3/60ths of a second, or 1/20th of a second, so it doesn't sound like, it still sounds very short, but when you consider that there are 1 frame links in Street Fighter 4, I will take 3 frame links. I think I could pretty reliably, with practice, always hit 3 frame links. 1 frame, no, I could not get that down ever. It's so hard. You have to be perfect. So that's good. Again, so it's a lot more. They're not trying to punish you and not trying to make it like, oh, here's this bread and butter, or here's this essential combo you need to know this character. But you need to be able to pull off 1 frame links to be able to actually have it happen. So It's good news for me.
Yeah, and definitely making the game more accessible. I'm all about that. A lot of people who are more serious about it who are in esports say, okay, well, like that's going to make the game, it's going to water down the competition. But actually, I really think that if you are a great fighting game player, it's more about being able to know your footsies and know what to do than it is about being able to execute combos. I think that's what really the essence of great fighting game play at least should be. So speaking of esports, man, I was flipping channels here and actually found a channel showing Japanese poker.
Ooh.
And I was sitting there, watching it because poker is the same in any language, and seeing it, I was like, wow, this is actually surprisingly fun to watch. And I realized, why not have a game that's actually more visually interesting than poker be played? Something like, say, Hearthstone.
Ooh.
Why not make Hearthstone a great big esport? I mean, we've already got that Geico sponsorship, which is awesome. We talked about that. Another shout out to my boy, the Geico Gecko.
Yeah, boy.
My boy. And so yeah, man, Hearthstone. And there might be more coming to Hearthstone, right?
Yes. So this is a story that's been developing over the course of several weeks. I think it first was 3 weeks ago. PC Gamer got a little kind of scroll from the Blizzard team, Team 5, who works on Hearthstone. They opened it up, a sound effect played, and it was this like basically ye old-timey English scroll like, please, the tournament, blah, 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 champions are readying, be prepared for our Hearthstone news on 22nd. So the famous Blizzard announcement of an announcement. We've since gotten several more announcements of the recursive announcement.
Please be excited.
Please be excited. So the most recent announcement of an announcement was that we knew something was happening on the 22nd, but now Blizzard's like, haha, we're going to do, again, there's been a lot of like little image leaks. It seems to reinforce people's theories that this is something related to this thing called the Argent Tournament. Again, Fliss and I are not World of Warcraft people, so that means jack to me. I have no idea. But, I don't know, that's whatever. I like tournaments. I was just, back in the day when I watched a lot of anime, pretty much any time a show had a tournament, I was like, oh yeah, time for a tournament.
The only show where I stopped feeling that way is Dragon Ball Z, right? Because after a while, that would just be like 12 episodes later, we've had one person throw one punch.
Well, that's an endemic problem, I think, to anime. Certainly epitomized with Dragon Ball, the Dragon Ball franchise. So there's going to be a big announcement. They've kind of been hyping this up. Fliss, I think you would suspect that this is probably a new expansion.
Yeah,
and so,
that's absolutely what I think it is.
Clarify for the people. So far, Hearthstone has had two kind of like new additional content. There are adventures and expansions. So just kind of clarify that for the folks out there who don't play Hearthstone.
Okay, well, Hearthstone is great because as a virtual card game, they can create single-player modes that you can't really do with a physical card game like Magic the Gathering. And they've released two of those so far. The first one was The Curse of Naxxramas, which brought several new cards to the game, including some really kind of key cards into the meta, as well as being a tremendously fun adventure. And then the second one was maybe not as good as Naxxramas, but that was Black Rock Mountain, which had, I think, kind of a better storyline to it. And maybe some really interesting boss fights. It just went by a little too quickly. But again, brought some new cards. I think Black Rock Mountain also tried to bring more of a tribal aspect to Hearthstone. That is to say, having certain categories of cards be usable in decks. And it didn't necessarily succeed because there weren't quite enough cards to make it work. And then in between those two, we had Goblins versus Gnomes, which was, as opposed to a single-player adventure where you play by yourself and play against virtual enemies to unlock the cards, this is just an expansion card pack. It's just adding a new type of card pack to the game, and it's just adding a whole bunch of new cards to the game. So I think that what we're going to see here with possibly the Argent Tournament, or whatever they're going to call it, I think it'd be really cool to just call it the tournament, but I think that this is going to be that second type. I think this is going to be just a massive infusion of cards into the game, which I think is going to really shake things up, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too. I actually, since Black Rock Mountain's release, I was kind of on board because every time you get, obviously any card game player knows this, every time you get new cards, the way people play and the decks people play changes. And so I was excited for that. But the Blackrock Mountain really, it changed stuff in bizarre ways. I think the intent was with this Dragon Tribal that Fliss mentioned. They tried to make, these kind of mid-range or longer, kind of control-y, more kind of decks work, but it actually made fast decks more effective. And then a certain combo deck, where everyone get in here, became a thing.
That was actually really good.
Thanks, man.
I'm impressed.
Pile on!
Is it because you hear it so often?
Yeah. Everybody.
Everyone, get in here. Everyone
Get in here. Pile on! Oh. So there's a certain combo deck where you hear that a lot. And I'm actually not really happy with the state of the metagame right now. I haven't really found a deck that speaks to me, which is probably why I'm still lower rank than Fliss right now. Because I haven't just been playing as much ranked mode. I've just been playing random the tavern brawls and all that stuff like that. So I'm very excited for an infusion of new cards. Hopefully they can address some of the problems. Again, I don't agree with a lot of the criticism people get online, especially on the subreddit, where everyone's like, "Oh, aggro are these fast decks? They're way too fast and aggressive and cheap." And I think you need decks that are fast to balance out greedy, very late game kind of decks. But I think at the point it is now, 3 of the best decks are extremely fast. It's that's your Tempo Mage, your Face Hunter, and your Aggro Paladin, which came up, and all those can kill you on turn 5, and it's not. So at this point, it feels like you're playing against them or you're playing them, and it's I like a little bit more variety. And then there's a Patron Warrior deck which can burst you for your entire health in one turn. So, oh goodness.
Yeah, I'm frustrated with the meta right now too, largely because I think that as someone who likes combo decks and likes fast decks, I would like to see more of them in the meta. I don't want to see Patron Warrior leave the meta because it's hilarious.
That's great.
And Face Hunter gets a lot of hate, and I've played against Face Hunter a lot, especially recently, kind of mediocre Face Hunters, which I probably have maybe a 60 or 70% win rate against.
Nice.
But that's with my Tempo Mage, right? Which is another deck that's getting a lot of hate right now. And I like Tempo Mage more than I like Face Hunter, both because it's a cheaper deck to build.
They're both cheap.
Yeah. But also because I think that Face Hunter has such a simple strategy, given its name, right? It's just you always hit the face. You're always hitting the face. Whereas with Tempo Mage, what wins or loses you the game is when you choose to go face.
Yeah. It's true.
And so I think Face Hunter, the deck kind of plays, and either your opponent beats you or they don't. Whereas Tempo Mage, you can beat yourself.
Fair enough.
Right? You can, and I like that a little bit more.
Fair enough. Well, we're getting very deep into the weeds here. Everyone who doesn't play Hearthstone is like, what the heck? But anyway, so July 22nd, they announced that they're going to have an in-person reveal. They're going to have a big event in San Francisco. There's a place called The Foundry. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, they have a game night there. They're doing this on a Wednesday, midday. Blizzard devs are coming. People in the community are coming. A lot of famous streamers are coming.
Hey, Alex, isn't the Foundry in San Francisco?
It is. It's downtown. It's very easy to get to for me. But it's midday on
You're gonna be there?
It's a midday on a Wednesday. Ugh.
You should be there.
And
the impact factor needs you to be there.
I know. Special reporting from the scene.
You could live tweet it.
Maybe I'll live tweet the stream. I don't know. So many people have already registered. I doubt I'd be able to get in at this point. But yeah, so it's cool. I mean, that is one of the perks of living in San Francisco. A lot of stuff happens here that I could go to in theory.
I see what you're doing. Dropping that. I see you there.
I'm just saying, a lot of cool stuff happens here, and maybe I'd do more of it if there was someone who would just have someone to also go out and go to these stupid things with. I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know.
Well, right now I can't leave my apartment because all I'm doing is playing Demon's Souls.
So that's gonna be exciting. So by the time we record our next episode, we'll know at least what the announcement is. And we're getting close to the scheduling of content. So if they're announcing it on Wednesday, I'm really hoping it's a short window between when they announce it and when it's actually out, because we're kind of coming up on when we should be getting new content pretty soon here. So I hope maybe it's like an announcement, and then they're like, oh, and it's coming out in 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, I would be very, very happy with a release anytime in August.
So, Fliss, let's move on from stories about stuff that I know about to stuff I know nothing about.
Okay, well, of the two of us, I'm the only one to be active on Kickstarter right now, and that's probably a good thing. That's probably how you can afford to spend far too much money buying packs in Hearthstone.
I'll probably spend more once this expansion's released, if it is an expansion.
Moneybags.
Yeah.
Anyway, but a game that I did not back, in part because I thought it sounded too ambitious, is Star Citizen. And it's a game that I really want to deliver on its promises, but it seems like it's having a little bit of trouble doing that, which I don't think is too big of a surprise. Unfortunately, we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the Impact Factor. They announced that the first-person shooter module. Now, Star Citizen is a game that's supposed to be creating like an entire virtual universe, like literally the universe that you can play around in, that you can be a quote-unquote Star Citizen in, and you can be a merchant or a fighter or a marine or whatever you want to be. And they announced that their first-person shooter module, Star Marine, has been indefinitely delayed, and this was quite some time ago. Now, this is causing quite a stir in the Kickstarter community. The Star Citizen is the biggest crowd-funded project to date. It's gotten nearly, about $85 million?
Yeah, $85
raised,
million. Yeah.
And that keeps going up. And so they delayed this first-person shooter module. It may or may not ever happen, and this has ruffled some feathers, especially on the forums. And one member of the Star Citizen community, I'm trying to get his name again here.
I think it's Derek Smart, I believe.
Yes.
Could be wrong about that.
That is correct. Was posting some pretty inflammatory stuff on the forums, kind of agitating that this was evidence that things were being mishandled, that the game was not going to be as good as it was promised to be. And the developers said, okay, fine. If you're going to agitate like this, if you're going to start clamoring for your money back, we're going to give you your money back. And everybody on the forums was just like, hey, does this mean we can get our money back? And there was an informal poll of more than 1,000 members on the forums, and it seemed that about 25%, a little more than that actually, think that they maybe should be able to get a refund. So this is causing quite a big storm, right? Because all of a sudden this money that's probably being used to develop a game, people are saying, hey, we might want this back. So the developers got on it, squashed it, sent out a message saying that they were refunding Mr. Smart's money because they were kicking him out of the Kickstarter. They were doing this to punish him.
Yeah, exactly.
He's getting his money back because he's being a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a refund. You're getting divested from this
Right.
thing. You're not going to get any special bonuses. You're not going to get any of this or that. You're not a backer anymore. Get out of here. Not a refund.
And they make a really good point in this, in saying that, not only are they doing this because he's kind of stirring up trouble, which, maybe people have a right to stir up a little bit of trouble if they're upset about the way things are going, but also because he's doing this, at least in their opinion, in part to promote a game that he's developing.
Yeah.
So, maybe some conflict of interest there in what he's doing.
Yeah. So, this brings up the whole issue of, returning crowdfunded money in the first place. And I think they need to stick to their guns. Not that I support Star Citizen. Certainly I haven't given them any money. I'm almost certainly never going to be able to play it unless I want to build a computer for it. So I have really no personal investment at all. But you get into an extremely slippery slope if you start giving back donor money, right? Because, of these games, I think one of the biggest divides in the community in general, there's a lot of divides, but I think one of the most pertinent ones for this discussion is people don't understand how much time and how much money and how much hard work goes into making even basic games. Even less ambitious games than Star Citizen, and certainly most games I'd say are less ambitious than Star Citizen. And so you are inevitably going to get frustrated because it takes time and it takes money, and, I think if you start returning money for that, any Kickstarter game, the second it takes longer than anticipated, it's going to lose its money, and you can't work on a budget if your budget is constantly in a state of flux. And so I think, again, I've brought this up, and I'll continue to bring this up. donating money to a Kickstarter. I don't know if Star Citizen was on Kickstarter. It might have had its own thing.
It started on Kickstarter and then moved to its own thing.
This is not an investment. You're not an investor. You're not a shareholder. This isn't even lending your money. You're donating your money. This is like if you put $1 in some sort of, if you drop a quarter into one of those like Salvation Army things, you're not getting it back. That's not your money anymore. This is a donation because you support the idea of what they're doing. And if you're donating correctly, it's because you've done your research and you have a good faith estimate and a good faith reassurance that something that you would like to is going to come out of this.
Yeah, I want to talk about this from a personal perspective because I'm very excited about a game that I backed. That is Perception. We've talked about this before. That's the only game I've ever backed on Kickstarter. It's the only game I intend to back for a really long time on Kickstarter. And I did that specifically because I really like the work of the developers who were asking for money for it. They were asking for a very small amount of money, which maybe is not a good thing, but they were asking for what I consider to be a very reasonable amount with really reasonable stretch goals, things that seem doable to me from what little I know about how games are built. But more importantly, I was doing it because these were people I liked, because a different game from associated developers, that is, the people who'd worked with them on earlier games, did not get funded on Kickstarter, and I thought that they deserved the chance to make their own game independently. And I was willing to, like you said, donate money. If I never see any part of that again, I just have to be okay with that. And I am. Now, I hope they come through for me.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
But I have every faith that they're trying. Mm-hmm. And if they fail, well, that's just how it works.
Of course. And I think, just again, to play devil's advocate to myself, there are certain things that Star Citizen and so many other Kickstarted or crowd-supported projects do wrong. I think the idea of stretch goals is kind of inane. I think when you are constantly expanding your scope, I don't even understand how you budget for that or how you can even promise any sort of delivery window. And I think that's one of the issues of handling Star Citizen. They've got mining and trading and space battles, and they were supposed to have first-person shooter battles and this and that. And the scope is so huge. I think it is a legitimate complaint from Derek Smart and others in the community that you have all these disparate parts that are each progressing at their own rate, but when are they going to all coalesce into one experience? I think that's a legitimate complaint because honestly, your eyes get too big. It doesn't matter how many $85 million you have. This game could take years and years, if it even ever comes together. But I think that, again, even not Star Citizen specifically, I think it's an issue larger. It seems like, well, give us an extra $100,000 and we'll add a new character. It's just like, I think I like it best when the stretch goals are just something like, well, we'll try to bring it to more platforms, or we'll do this, or that they're reined in. Because people get really crazy with these, that, you know, by the time like you have your normal goal and the final stretch goal, they're two entirely different games. And I think that's where you get into problem. I think developers who have a clear idea of the one game they want to make, when they come into it, I think those are the ones that are most successful. Like looking at the Shovel Knight, if you go back to look at the original Shovel Knight Kickstarter, even the most stretch goals are just like, oh, you'll have extra bosses. And like that's an easy thing to add. It's not like, oh, you're going to have a recursive game where instead of a 2D Nintendo-looking platformer, it's a third-person action game where you're a Shovel Knight in fully 3D rendered environments or something like that.
Right, I completely agree with you. I really like when they stretch goals show us things like, you know, I don't know, I like it when it's like, okay, we're going to add a new character, because that's like just as much making a skin as anything
exactly.
else. And I like things when it's like, okay, well, we'll add this detail to the story mode, or we'll add another room to this adventure, or we'll add something that doesn't, like you say, fundamentally change the game. Something that is just kind of like, well, an add-on to what they've already proposed. And that's what it really should be. So donate carefully. Think about what you're doing when you spend your money for that, because you may never see it again. At the same time, don't leave these people out to dry, and consider it if that's something you're interested in.
Exactly. And Star Citizen, I think it's going to be a game at some point. They have too much money and too much talent and too big of a team for nothing to happen. And it's been demoed. And I think it's an example of, you know, obviously it's like, I think the highest funded crowdsourced game of all time at this point, 84 million. That's like crazy.
Yep.
Crazy to me. So it'll come together. There are legitimate complaints, but anyone who's kickstarted or crowdfunded a game, do not expect to get your money back. I think that's the takeaway. Derek Smart got it because he stirred the pot like a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, if $250 is worth getting your name dragged through the mud, and
yeah.
then fine, man. But
it
seems like there are better uses of your time and energy.
Speaking of a name dragged through the mud, segue, how about a name no longer being in existence at all? So we had some increasingly sad, confusing, interesting news to come out of Metal Gear Solid 5. So we've talked about the whole Konami, Kojima breakup, the breakup of the century. They're not on speaking terms anymore. I'm going too far with this analogy here. But Konami and Hideo Kojima, the legendary, famous creator of the Metal Gear Solid franchise, have parted ways. But obviously still, Konami is putting out this last of Kojima's games, Metal Gear Solid 5. Everything I've heard about it is great. People are excited. But we saw hints of this earlier. A lot of like the Kojima Productions, so his production kind of separate group within Konami. That logo has kind of been removed from everything. Trailers, it no longer said Kojima Productions. And so now I guess the kind of final straw here, maybe one among the final straws, is the box art of Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, has now been changed. So instead of saying Hideo Kojima atop, it no longer has his name anywhere on it. I don't know what to make of this. Fliss, do you have any thoughts?
Well, to carry your analogy far further than we should, right? Like, this isn't just like a slightly unfriendly breakup. This is deleting them from your phone, blocking them on Facebook, going through all their old emails and just like erasing their names, hacking into their computer and deleting all of their files. This is the angry, jilted significant other revenge breakup, where it's just like, we just want to pretend that they never even existed, which is crazy, right? Because Kojima and Metal Gear Solid are almost inseparable in the gaming consciousness.
Yeah, it's so weird, at least for my whole history of a gamer, is like, basically Konami is Kojima. Like, and I'm sure they don't like that, probably. That the sum of everything they do, at least in the Western audience, is one developer. So maybe that's it. I don't know. We still don't know what happened. Maybe he was asking for too much. Maybe just Konami, they wanted to focus on the real money makers, which are pachinko machines and like arcade kind of things in Japan. They're gambling machines. They've said
soon-to-be slot machines in the United States and mobile games everywhere.
Exactly. They've said that they want to focus on mobile, which they're a couple years late for that. I don't know. Other Square Enix and Capcom, other Japanese companies have already kind of very well exploited that market. Who knows? I've heard some talk that this is good for Kojima. I don't know how. I mean, I guess I don't know how it's bad. I don't know who sees Metal Gear Solid 5 and doesn't know it's made by Hideo Kojima. I mean, he's like, if you know a Japanese developer, he's certainly in the top 5. Like, if you knew 3 Japanese developers, you probably are one of the 3 you know. So, I don't know. It's interesting. This is bizarre. I don't know what's happening with this Konami-Kojima thing. Maybe, though, maybe in a best-case scenario world, his name is removed because he's trying to move away from him being defined by the franchise because he's working soon on a new project. He's actually already maybe working. He has a team and he's working on something. He's like, hey, I'm no longer just going to be the Metal Gear Solid guy. I'm going to be the Metal Gear Solid guy and the happy fun time arcade racer guy. Who knows? I mean, who knows what he's going to do?
Well, whatever it is, I'm looking forward to it, and I don't think that this move will ultimately mean all that much.
No, I mean,
it's kind of scandalous right now, but this is the gamer version of celebrity breakups.
I mean, the only thing it's going to mean is that nobody cares about Konami anymore. In the West, at least, or to the gaming audience. No one's going to care anymore.
Did you care about Konami before?
Yeah, they make Metal Gear Solid games. And back in the day, they made Castlevania games. But they clearly have no interest in making Castlevania games anymore. They don't have a lot of talent who made the old Castlevania games anymore. Igarashi is making his own Bloodstained. Kojima's gone and is probably going to do his own thing. I really hope he doesn't do more Metal Gear Solid-y kind of stuff. I would want him to try something else. Like, I'd love to see an RPG from Hideo Kojima. That'd be nuts. So, yeah, no, there's no reason to care about Konami anymore, I think.
That'd be awesome.
But, I mean, I'm excited for Metal Gear Solid 5. I'm not, like, a huge fan of the franchise. I played 4 and really enjoyed it, and I've played bits and pieces of 1 and 3, and they're both good. But, yeah. And one little last thing, and this last bit of news and views here. Just a quick Batman update. You know we love talking Batman. 3 weeks in a row now.
I'm Batman.
I'm the Batman. It's psychopath. This is very fast. So we know...
When's my update? When's my PC fixed?
My parents are dead! There's no PC update until September. Alright, that's enough news. Let's move on. Let's pretend it didn't happen. Yep, you heard that right. Batman came out in June. PC version. Again, not everyone has issues, but a lot of people have issues. It's not going to be fixed until September at earliest. That's gross. That really hurting the legacy of Batman, because I've been playing it, and it's great. It's honestly, like, surprising me how good it is. But it just sucks that all people are going to remember from it is how broken the PC version was. So, yeah, that's it. We would love to hear from the community the news items you all thought had the biggest impact. So please feel free to shoot us an email at impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com like Thomas did last week. We still have more to get to his email. We'll probably get to that in a later episode. Thank you again for emailing. Please, anyone who listens, shoot us an email, impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. So, Fliss, let's put things in perspective.
Perspectives.
Perspectives is part of the show, well, when any number of things can happen. In academia, it's when investigators share their opinions with the community at large. Here, it's a revolving section that doesn't revolve too often, but where we experiment with what's worth discussing. Usually, Fliss and I will pick out an editorial piece and discuss it together, and the editorial piece is usually about some sort of larger subject within the games world. So let us get started. We've got a good one, a big one. News review's a little bit faster. Let's spend a little more time on this. Fliss, what do we have? We got a double whammy today.
That's right. We've got 2 articles to talk about today, both of them coming from the wonderful Slate.com. The first one is called Serious Bill Paying Skillage. That's by Laura Hudson. And the second one is Imagining the Future is Dangerous by Jacob Brogan. Now, the first one of these is a review of Ernest Cline's latest novel, Armada. That's his second novel. His first one was Ready Player One. And the second article here, Imagining the Future is Dangerous, is an interview with Ernest Cline, where he talks about Ready Player One and about Armada, and kind of about some of his inspirations and opinions about the gaming community, about writing, and about how science fiction should portray the future.
Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about here. Oh.
So I think the first thing we should get into here is a little bit about Ernest Cline.
Yeah.
And his novel. So Alex, you read Ready Player One, right?
I did, yeah. Something in my history. So Ernest Cline is this, like, a sci-fi writer who is ensconced in nerd and geek culture. He's like a lifelong, passionate person about basically everything 80s pop culture, nerd culture stuff. I first heard about Ernest Cline by listening to a lot of podcasts. People would bring up book recommendations, and I'd say pretty much universally, the most recommended book by all of these, I guess, self-titled gamers or games media people was Ready Player One. That it was the best fiction written about video games of all time. It was great. You need to read it if you like games. Got a ton of praise. So I'm like, all right, fine. I usually spend my free time playing games and not reading. That's probably my own fault. Slapping my wrist, whatever. Who cares? So I picked it up and I read it. On a positive note, the book is a page-turner. I finished it in the course of a couple nights. It's fine. It's action-packed enough. Ready Player One focuses on this character who has a name I'm going to forget as we're recording this podcast. It's set in a future where it's a dystopia kind of Earth. The Earth is kind of scorched. A lot of the natural plant life is dying, and everyone has taken shelter in this virtual reality world called Oasis. It's this huge, you can do whatever you want, virtual reality headset thing. Everyone's playing, blah, blah, blah. There's some sort of huge quest that the creator of this Oasis wants to give person control of Oasis, or basically some Willy Wonka kind of thing. Come visit him.
Willy Wonka, Tron, whatever.
Yeah, however you wanna take it. But like this whole mystery and this whole quest is steeped in 80s pop trivia, and you need to have like the nerdiest of the nerdy things to understand these riddles, to find these clues, to have these skills, to reach the final quest, to get the final thing, and then to be able to win this prize. And this evil corporation wants to win it because blah blah. They want this money, or because obviously this company's worth billions. Whatever. So that's pretty much all I can say on the positive. The characters fall flat. The reference to 80s pop culture and stuff are used basically just as like a checklist of like, oh, look at all the things I know, and if you know them too, high five, we're in our secret club. wish fulfillment writing, it feels like. And again, it feels like a young adult novel. The plot is very thin and straightforward. There's no surprises. The characters are one-dimensional, no real character growth. So that's Ernest Cline. So I was actually kind of disappointed after hearing how much praise. I guess it's cool that this book came out before a lot of this Oculus Rift stuff, but...
It seems like your review would agree with what Laura Hudson is saying about his second book. His second book is called Armada, and she writes that Ernest Cline's Armada is everything wrong with gaming culture wrapped up in one soon-to-be best-selling novel. And she goes on to pan this book, to call it pandering, to call it plotting, to call it other adjectives that start with P and are bad.
Yeah.
And to basically say that everything that was wrong with the first book is wrong with the second book, and the story is not as good, and the references are more obtrusive, and they're less interesting. So it's basically just like a bad version of the first book.
Exactly. And to quote Hudson here, she writes that geek culture has been long preoccupied with trivia, the ability to recognize and make references to games, movies, and TV shows, beloved within various geeky subcultures, is often considered an in-group badge of honor, a signifier of credibility and even power. And I think that is one of the huge issues with Cline's novels, as well as video game culture in general, is that knowing these obscure references and knowing these pieces of trivia is like the way to prove that you are someone who is a gamer or is someone who's involved in this field. I think that's a dangerous, if not at the very least, annoying and frustrating part of gaming culture. You constantly have to prove that you belong within the community of people who play video games. And then we get into whole other issues when you start to recognize the people who are quizzed the most often, especially anything that sets you apart from the standard white male. Look at you, quizzed on your video game knowledge more frequently.
Right, and I think that this is one thing that we can start talking about in a kind of social science perspective, where we always compare geek culture with sporting culture. And I think that this is an apt comparison, right? Because we're talking about how people craft their identities. And so if you are playing sports, then part of what you're doing is you're saying, I play sports. And so you can see me play sports and you know that I sport. Whereas with video games, until the advent of Twitch, you couldn't really say, okay, you can see that I play video games and you know that I video game. Like that was harder. And so this is like a first step, and then we expand that to a larger geek culture that's based on other consumable items like books, movies, TV shows. And so these references, this knowledge of trivia is how you show, okay, I consume this. This is how I geek. Mm-hmm. And I'm showing you that I geek. And basically, that means that knowledge capital, a knowledge of these references, a knowledge of these items, of these consumables, is easily translated into social capital. It's how you make connections. It's how you gain status and power within the community. And this translates over to sporting culture too, right? Where you have to know what your team is doing, who the players are, what number the players are, how many strikes they threw in the last game, or how many touchdowns were thrown in the previous game or caught by a receiver or sacks. All these statistics, right? This is something that's always brought up. But this just is a way of turning knowledge capital into social capital. And the problem that we have with video game culture is that you are, like you just said, constantly being forced to dredge up your knowledge capital again in order to maintain a basic level of membership in the community. And so I have not read either of Ernest Cline's books. It would be very hard for me to read Armada because it's not out yet. But I haven't read Ready Player One. I don't know what it's like. But in general, I don't like referential works because I think referential works have a barrier to entry, and I don't like that. I don't like things that set a high barrier that say, well, these are the people who belong and these are the people who don't. I'm always arguing for a more inclusive gaming culture. So again, haven't read the books, but I think this is a kind of indulging in a dangerous, or at the very least, damaging part of video game culture.
I think it gets to larger issues than that too. Is just this social this knowledge capital and the social capital you mentioned. I think it quelches creative freedom at times. I think when you're so reliant upon referential writing, or referential game design, or referential discussion of games, you get into a less than critical place where everything is just comparative and nothing is critical. Hudson writes in her review of Armada that this all video game culture, including the writing of Ernest Cline, needs to separate inspiration from imitation. And I think that's one of the most important things, because especially in the advent of games that we have now, where you're having lots of games coming out in every front, you're getting a lot of these people who just want to remake Mario or remake some sort of game. And I think it's dangerous that if you're just imitating what's been done in the past, not only do we not move forward as a creative industry, we don't move forward with pushing new ideas or bringing new ideas to the forefront. And I think, honestly, my biggest problem with this referential kind of culture that we live in is that it squelches critical thought.
And I think that's really interesting, man. I think that this leads us to a really interesting discussion of nostalgia, because in his interview with Jacob Brogan, Cline says that he thinks nostalgia is a good thing, and he thinks that we should be reveling in nostalgia as geeks. And I completely disagree with him.
Me too.
I think that nostalgia is a damaging, dangerous, other bad adjectives that start with D, form of escapism. So I'm in agreement with Cline that nostalgia is escapism, but I think it's a bad form of escapism. I think it's problematic. I think that what it does is that when we talk about nostalgia here, like let's be clear, when we're talking about nostalgia, we're not just talking about thinking, oh man, yeah, that was really great. We're thinking about, oh man, that was really great, and it is better than everything that there is now.
Yep.
And so when we think about the way memory works, right, our memories are not honest with us. Our memories have a way, just for survival, of repressing the bad and emphasizing the good. And this can happen just in terms of video games, where we think about a game that we played and we forget the things that frustrated us and we remember the things that were really good about it. And so what we're doing when we play a new game and we're feeling nostalgic about old games is we're forcing this new game to live up to a standard set by a game that literally doesn't exist. It's a game that exists in our memories, and that the new game cannot live up to a nostalgic memory of a game. It can't do it. That's impossible.
Yeah.
So what it does is it stymies, like you said, this creative freedom. It says, you cannot be as good as this. And then, simultaneously, this indulging in nostalgia forces us to say, we can't look critically at what we remember as being great, because we might discover that it wasn't as great. So anything you say that is bad about this thing that I love, that I'm feeling nostalgic about, means that your opinion isn't legitimate, that your criticism isn't valid. And that's a huge problem, because that means that how are we supposed to be critical? How are we supposed to move our art form? Because you and I are both big proponents of video games as art. How are we supposed to move it forward? I don't think we can do that if we're reveling in nostalgia, which is kind of what Cline wants us to do.
Exactly. I'm going to just read what you wrote in the show notes here, because I like it word for word, and just kind of reiterate what you just said. So, nostalgia is escapism, but very problematic kind of escapism, because it forces anything to live up to a literally unreal standard. It requires an illusory. It also requires an illusory perfect past that does not allow criticism or real reflection. So it simultaneously stymies the future while censoring discussion of the past. Nostalgia is bad poop. I 100% agree with you. This is an issue I've had with a lot of the game's discussions, and also why I maintain that Star Wars Return of the Jedi is garbage, despite the nostalgia goggles that I have on. Because everyone, when they talk about their favorite games of all time, they bring up like a lot of these games that almost certainly the nostalgia is the strongest prevailing factor in why they think it's their favorite game of all time. Now, I'm probably going to get in some hot water here, but I love Mario 64 as much as the next guy. It's a great game. It obviously invented 3D platforming gaming and paved the way for 3D games in general. Obviously, it's a highly impactful, highly influential game, and a great one. But I think you'd be foolish to say that Mario 64 is a better game than Super Mario Galaxy 2, or Mario Galaxy 2. Because you can perfect stuff over time, and Nintendo, while it acknowledges acknowledges the successes of its past, is always trying to innovate, and does so. And so I think like, even when I think about my top 5 games of all time, which maybe we can turn our perspectives in section to that so we can talk top games, because I love talking about, and I love rank lists and talking games. Almost all my games have come out within the past 10 years. And I think that's because, as a medium, games are getting better. I know there's a lot of people who would say otherwise, and certainly I don't mean to diminish the accomplishments of old games. Again, I think Super Mario World is probably one of the best games of all time, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think this reliance on nostalgia is incredibly damaging, and even just from this opinion standpoint, I feel it makes me feel guilty for saying that The Last of Us is my second favorite game of all time because it's recent and all people it's not as good as whatever, it's not as good as Mega Man 2. Well, maybe from like some sheer gameplay thing is, but I think there's so much that goes into it that it just frustrates me. It just frustrates me that whenever you hear discussions of like these games, almost everyone who's been in the industry for a long time, they think the best games of all time like came out, games haven't gotten better since 1989, and I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I'm going to get myself into hot water again, and I'm sure I'll get myself into hot water about this a lot, but since you're going to be there with me, right?
Yeah, let's boil together, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. But I love graphics, man. I love them. I love beautiful games. And especially in fighting games, I mean, compare the original Mortal Kombat with Mortal Kombat 10, and just, oh, man. Like, the original Mortal Kombat was so much fun when I was a kid. It was so cool to see those sprites moving, to see like real people doing stuff. But honestly, right, people look more real in Mortal Kombat 10 than they did in those kind of photographic images in the original Mortal Kombat. The action is better, the gameplay is better. So, and I'm nostalgic about Mortal Kombat 10. I still like having a drink and sitting down and playing it with friends. But in terms of just a game, Mortal Kombat 10 is better. It's better than the original Mortal Kombat. And so I agree with you. I like beautiful games. I think games are moving forward and getting better on gameplay, on graphics, on so many other fronts. And so I think that constantly comparing them to an imagined ideal is terrible.
And I just think this nostalgia, again, blinds critical view because, like, especially with Armada bringing this back to Ernest Cline, I've seen The Last Starfighter. I've seen the original Star Wars. I've seen Tron. I've seen War Games. I've seen all the stuff that's referenced. I've seen, I've read Ender's Game. Are they good? Sure. Are they the best things ever that your entire life needs to revolve around? I don't think so. And so I think it just gets into all sorts of problematic areas there, and I think it brings up the issue of pandering in general. So this is one of the things that kind of irritates me about the gaming in general. Everything is designed, or at least for a long time, and we're kind of starting to move away from it, but every kind of advertisement and every discussion is revolved around pandering to your audience. And I think, though, Klein can wax poetic about how nostalgia is important and it's escapism and it blah blah blah, he likes the origin of this gamer culture and wants to focus on that origin. I think, honestly, it's easy things to pander to an audience. It's like when someone shows up and they're like, oh, hey, this is the best thing ever. It'll be like your favorite games combined. Did you like Final Fantasy VII? Well, here, this is a new Final Fantasy VII. I think you just get into dangerous territory when you start pandering to your audience. And I think it's something that I haven't organized my thoughts well enough to talk about it in too depth here, but so much of gaming culture revolves around pandering to the audience.
Yeah, and this brings up a great discussion that Hudson touches on, which is imitation and innovation, right? You talked about that, where you don't want to be I don't want, a new Final Fantasy VII. I mean, I do want a remastered one, but I don't want a new game to remake Final Fantasy VII and just be like, this is Final Fantasy VII, but with different characters. I want it to be something different. I want it to be something new that I can enjoy. And I think that this is even more important when we're talking about things like books and movies and comic books and other kinds of story-based fiction, where we don't want to see the same stories retold. We want to hear new stories. And so this is, again, important in games when we're talking about RPGs, right? We don't want to do the same story. I want a new story. And a quote from the book, from Armada here, that shows up in Hudson's review is, I felt like Luke Skywalker surveying a hangar full of A, Y, and X-Wing fighters just before the Battle of Yavin. Or Captain Apollo climbing into the cockpit of his Viper on the Galactica's flight deck. Ender Wiggin arriving at battle school. Or Alex Rogan clutching his Star League uniform, staring wide-eyed at a hangar full of Gunstars. I mean, this is exactly what you were just talking about. This is
so
just
bad.
checking a list. Oh, I saw this. I saw that. I saw this. And this is something that was harped on in our high school English classes, which is show, don't tell. I learned nothing about what was happening in that scene, except this character felt the same way as all these other characters in works of fiction that I was supposed to have seen. And so this is lazy writing, right? This is propping up your character development. You're substituting it with like the character development done in other works. Also, I'm going to harp on this from a personal standpoint. No one talks like that. No one talks like that. You don't say like, I felt like Luke Skywalker surveying a hangar full of A, Y, and X. Nobody talks like that. We say, even if I think someone's really cool, I'm going to be like, oh man, that's just like an X-Wing. Or like, oh, that looks like a Y-Wing. I'm never going to be like, oh, I know all the names. Hey, buddy, you forgot the B-Wing. So yeah, suck that.
I didn't even know there was a B-Wing. Definitely not a Star Wars person. But yeah, well, this is a huge thing that could be talked about for several episodes, but there are also other issues with the writing too. We won't really get into it, but certainly something you've talked about, Fliss, before. The main character from Armada certainly seems like Marty Sue, where Hudson compares and even compares some of the writing to fan fiction, where a female character falls in love with this male character just like, after they discovers he's a great gamer. I have no interest. Oh, no, you're sixth in the world at Armada? Oh, my gosh, I want to be your girlfriend.
You want to talk about Marty stewing, man? Like, in their video game cockpits, there's a special strain of weed to make them focus.
Oh, man, that was laughing when I read that. Yeah, a special strain of weed to make you a better gamer.
Can you even begin to imagine? I mean, think about every pop culture movie involving weed. Those characters are anything but focused.
My God.
Just, ridiculous.
And then on a science side, so that's like I'd say the social science side for you, but on a science side, Klein compares video games to sports in the way that they fulfill primal hunter-gatherer needs. And I think evolutionarily, I just disagree. I think that's not at all how they work. I think if nothing else, they just trigger endorphin releases because of just general adrenaline and is not giving you the hunter-gatherer excitement too. And then also to include gathering that excitement too, the hunter, is as exciting as gathering tomatoes you've grown. And like some games, sure, fulfill a hunter-gatherer thing, maybe first-person shooters, but does a puzzle game really fulfill your hunter-gatherer? Does it? Does playing Portal be like, yes, this is just when I was early nomadic human race, fulfilling my need to hunt and gather. And honestly, hunting and gathering are societal constructs. And then going back to where you come from, I don't think... I don't know. I think that was a dumb thing that he's mentioned in his interview, too.
Yeah, well, his interview, I encourage everyone to read it because I think it's better to let the author speak for themselves, and especially since I think that the author, in this case, makes a lot of the points that we're arguing against. I think he demonstrates exactly why all this stuff is bad, and I appreciate him doing that in the interview. And so I encourage you to read that. I also want to encourage everyone to sit down and read Hudson's review. It's very short. It's very witty. It's very well written.
Very well written. That's a great review.
She touches on something that we talked about again. You mentioned briefly in the portrayal of women, but also there's a quote again from the book in there that's their conversation. And Maddie Myers, who also works at Offworld, contributes to Offworld sometimes, has written about how male gamers don't seem to want girls who are better than them or as good as them at games. They want girls who appreciate how good they are at games. And that passage is exactly that, right? Like, she's like, oh, can you play video games? He's like, yes, and I play them better than you. And she's like, well, now I want to jump you.
Yeah.
And like, you want to talk about a wish fulfillment? Well, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. So this is a huge subject. We'd love to keep this conversation going. If any of you guys have stuff you'd like to talk about. So those are the two pieces. The first is called Imagining the Future is Dangerous, and that's an interview with Ernest Cline by Jacob Brogan on Slate. And then I seriously highly recommend you read this. This is Serious Bill Payne Skillage by Laura Hudson, a review of Ernest Cline's Armada on Slate as well. We'll link those in the show notes. I think they're both worth your time, especially as Ernest Cline is increasingly becoming this face of video game kind of fiction writing, and I think that's not a good thing. At least certainly could be a better thing.
He doesn't represent my nerddom.
Yeah,
he doesn't represent my brand of nerddom.
Exactly.
So don't let me in with that.
All right, Fliss. Now that our work is done and logged, let's get into our experimental methods.
Experimental methods.
In experimental methods, Fliss and I talk about the video games we've been playing recently. No papers or pipettes, cells, or census here, just our words. We look at what works, what doesn't, and what we're looking forward to testing. Fliss, what experiments have you been running this week?
Well, basically, I've been running my way through Demon Souls.
Running away from a boss, running away from enemies, running around in circles.
Yes, hiding behind pillars.
Ooh, nice, good.
Hiding behind my giant steel shield. Anyway, I'm really enjoying Demon Souls. I'll try and keep this brief because this is gonna be a running theme here. But I'm about 10 hours in to the game. I've beaten one boss. I've made my way to a second boss that is kicking my butt. But I'm also playing a more difficult class compared to a lot of the other ones, I think, and especially because like a lot of the things that I didn't know going into this game. Like the way items have to be maintained, a lot of the stuff that you get when you're playing a knight is stuff that can actually be kind of burdensome, right? Like you get really nice armor and you get really nice weapons, but you have to maintain those. You have to spend souls to maintain those. Otherwise, you're just kind of throwing away the advantages you were given. So I don't know whether I will replay this game. I'm still really far away from the end of this game, especially at the pace I'm going. Fortunately, I have a couple days blocked out that are going to be like Demon Souls days where I'm going to turn off all the lights and just flick on the Christmas lights to decorate my apartment and like play this game for a while.
That on air.
Yeah, I did. Hey, I've got no shame. No shame. They look great.
How old are you, man?
Actually, I'm 25 now.
Congrats. Happy birthday on the podcast.
Thank you. And actually, when this gets posted, my younger brother will have just turned 21.
Oh, wow. Happy birthday to him, too.
Yeah, so very exciting. Very exciting. His birthday is Thursday the 16th, so congratulations to him on air. And but anyway, I'm having a lot of fun with the game. It really scratches a dark fantasy itch that has been missing in my life. I definitely have experienced frustration with it, but I feel like a lot of the frustrations that I have with it are just like I find out something too late.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or oh, I needed to do that. I appreciate a lot of the depth. I appreciate that the game has secret areas and stuff like that, or areas that are not immediately obvious. It definitely means that I have retreated to the wiki.
I think as a first-time player, it's just going to help you. It doesn't detract too much from the experience, I promise you.
Yeah, and like I'm not big on reading through walkthroughs because then you're just following directions to beat a game, but there's definitely points where I would glance down and be like, okay, after I died the second time to the second boss here, I was just like, okay, clearly I'm not equipped for something to beat this boss, like because I should be doing more damage. Like I'm not playing badly. I'm aware that I'm like recognizing the patterns in the attacks. I'm not doing things that I think are wrong. I need to see if there's something I'm missing, and turns out there was. So, gonna go back and try that again. That'll be fun. But yeah, I'm enjoying the game a lot. I'll keep you updated. My confidence in winning the hat is not as high as it was, but my determination has not waned.
I think I'm pretty sure I'm getting a new hat.
Well, I'm going to be on vacation for like 2 of our bedded weeks, so I might try and convince you to let me pause.
We'll see. We'll see how far you get before that vacation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's going to be 8 weeks to beat one game. 2 months, man.
Right. Well, but see, if I'm not playing any games other than mobile during that time, right, then I can't. Right, because I'd be willing to say, no Heroes of the Storm during all of that time, which is, as you know, a huge sacrifice for me.
Oh, yeah. Well,
we'll talk about that. What are you playing, man? You teased some Batman.
Yeah, so I've been playing a lot of Batman. I don't know how far I'm into it. I wish more games had like an in-game clock because I just like seeing that. I would guess I
agree completely.
Somewhere between 15 to 20 hours, maybe. I'm really, really enjoying it. I said I had mixed feelings last time. Those issues haven't really resolved themselves, the representation of female characters. But I've gotten more accustomed to the Batmobile. I think some of the criticisms about the Batmobile are overblown, certainly. Sure, it doesn't handle great, but it doesn't handle too badly either. I think that maybe if they reduced its usage by maybe 30%, it'd be much better. They force you to use it probably certainly more than I would like, and probably way more than other people would like. But those are the negatives aside. The game is just phenomenal. On a story side, I won't go into any spoilers, but they bring up so many unexpected, for me at least, because I'm not a super, whatever, ensconced in the Batman lore, very surprising twists. You have your crazy cast of characters that are doing surprising things. Like a character just showed up. I won't have any spoilers. Who I thought wasn't going to be in the game at all. And they had this whole interesting kind of side of the story. I find myself very engaged with how things are developing from that, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I think they've done a good job at making Scarecrow a lead villain. I think
awesome.
He's always been one of my favorites just from a lore standpoint. I think his power is extremely, or his whatever he does is extremely interesting, and he certainly was among the highlights in Arkham Asylum. Since you've played that, Fliss, I don't know. You would probably agree with that. I think a few times the Scarecrow shows up in Arkham Asylum, so it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. You are not into cosplay yet. I really am. I absolutely want to do the Arkham Asylum Scarecrow because he's just such a badass looking version of the character, and
truly horrifying.
The levels in that are awesome. Like the kind of some of the platforming stuff is kind of lame, but just the character modeling, the way they kind of try and I think actually at least in a couple places do succeed in making you the player a little scared is great.
Well, yeah, it's just you don't know what's real anymore.
Right, and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know where you can step and where you can't, and making you feel unstable in that way, I think, is awesome.
So that's cool. I think the combat is as good as it's ever been, and great. I think though I'm realizing that I don't think I'm that great at Batman's combat. There's a lot of these combat challenges, and I suck. I can't do them. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I guess that's probably a guilty admission. I'm almost certainly not going to be able to get the platinum trophy just because I don't know. I'm proficient in the combat. I can counter and hit people, but I'm not great at it, but whatever. I'm good enough. I'm good enough that I can make it through. I don't know what it is. Maybe I just mashed too hard. Who knows? But yeah, and I mentioned last time the way that side quests are done. I think there's an article I posted on my news and on my news and views on my blog saying about, or I will post. I don't know. Time. How about basically open world games are so bloated with content that they're hard to find the fun because it kind of you feel burdened by how much there is to do. I think Batman controls that in a very smart way. You've got certain side quests, and you have a radial wheel that you can choose what side quest you want. But for the most part, they're not marked on your map, at least initially. And so the ways you go about discovering these side quests are just by moving around the city. So if you happen very early in the game, you find someone who's kind of brutally murdered, and you need to scan them. And one of the telltale signs of this serial killer is that opera music is playing. And so when you're flying around the city, I'll just be flying around, going towards the main story quest, and I'll hear opera music coming. I'm like, oh gosh, what's that? And so I'll descend to the ground and then try and track it. And then once you get close enough, it'll pop up on your mini-map as a quest. And so it's kind of really cool to organically discover these quests. And I was worried at first because, Arkham Knight, the city of Gotham, is huge. It's huge and super densely packed with stuff to do. So I was worried that it wouldn't be able to find everything. But I've come across a lot pretty organically. And then on other instances, if you haven't found one of the pieces of these side quests to do in a while, Alfred will give you some intel, and it'll mark a general area on your map that you should go to look for it, and then you discover it that way. And so I think that's really cool, because I haven't felt like overwhelmed with the amount there is to do, even though there is so much to do in that game. And so it's really cool. And I like the side quests are all very different from each other, and so I'm liking that a lot. And finding myself, as good as the story is, I keep finding myself distracted by doing different side quests and playing around with that. But I think everything is just so polished and smooth and fun. And there's one element of the story that happens probably pretty early in, I'd say maybe 10% of the way through the story, that completely redefines how Batman interacts with the world for the remainder of the game. And I won't go into any spoilers, but it is great. And constantly how this interaction is changed, it influences every single time you see a new story scene, and it is really interesting and keeps like stuff dynamic. And gosh, I'm just going on and on. I'll probably still talk about it again next time. One more thing I want to mention about the combat is there's a lot of instances where you team up with a second character to fight. Awesome. And these tag team battles are great. You can freely switch between the two of them. You've got special combo takedowns, so you can like press the button and you like Batman will like uppercut an enemy, and then your second character will come in and like finish them, and then you switch to that new character. It's like everything in that game is designed to make you feel cool and make you feel powerful and make you feel like the Batman. And I'm having a blast with it. It's a meaty game because again, I'm like 15 to 20 hours in, and I'm only percent-wise 55% done with the story, and there's a lot of side quests I still haven't done, so it's huge. It's huge. I'm really loving it. It sucks that the PC version is kind of leaving a dark mark on the game, but you know, what can you do? All right, I've been talking for like 3 minutes straight here, so that's Batman Arkham Knight. I've been
enjoying every minute of it.
Yeah, it's not a good jumping in point, I would say. Too much of the plot is reliant on the past games, and I honestly think it's close, but I think Arkham Asylum might still be the better game, because there are certain sacrifices you make to have an open world game with a ton of different side quests. And I think Arkham Asylum is a very focused experience, but I really, really would highly recommend it, especially for anyone who's played any of the Batman games. Just get it on PS4 or Xbox One, not on the PC.
All right, man. Well, hey, let's move on to our odds and ends.
With this,
some errata.
Yeah, let's do errata. All right. I thought maybe you were going to try and fit in some Here's the Storm talk there.
No,
You're afraid?
Yeah,
folks, he's refraining from it because he wants to play a game after we finish recording. That's probably why.
That is 100% true. You are not wrong.
The episode will hopefully be under an hour and a half or around an hour and a half because of that. So yeah, let's Fliss. You have any movies, TV, life, etc. in our section we call errata that you want to talk about?
I absolutely do. So first of all, I've been having a lot of fun here because it's summer in Japan. It's festival season. So I'm participating in festivals. I just did one last weekend. It's great. It's a great workout. You can check out my blog, Fliss of the North Star, for some photos of that coming up soon. Maybe not this week, probably next week. We'll have some good festival photos coming out. But in movie news, San Diego Comic-Con, which no longer talks about comics, saw the announcement that Pacific Rim 2 is going to start shooting in November. Oh, man, instantly jumps to my most anticipated movie.
Oh, yeah, Pacific Rim 1 was great. It's everything I wanted. Well, some of the character stuff was a little bit too long, but it's almost everything I wanted. The robot fights were awesome.
It was great. It was great. Everything except the male lead in that movie was great.
I thought the male lead was fine. There needed to be more robot fighting.
Yeah. But in a movie that's all robots fighting monsters, which is basically the best movie ever, it did a lot of great things.
It did.
And one thing, we talked about last week how much I disliked the action sequences in Avengers. I think the action sequences in the original Pacific Rim were really well shot, and I hope that keeps up in the new one. Del Toro, who, again, we've talked about this before, but I adore Del Toro. I like everything he's ever done.
You haven't seen The Strain, then. So bad.
I have not seen it. I will watch it, though.
I'm sure you will.
I will watch anything that he has touched. I will watch. And he's amazing. I think he's great. I really admire a lot of his work, and I admire the way he interacts with fans and with other people around him. So again, yeah, great big fan of that. Hellboy 3. Get Hellboy 3.
Don't.
Make it happen.
I'm excited. I'm so happy for Japan and China and basically Asiatic territory that saved Pacific Rim, because it did not do great in domestic box office, but it did huge in the East. So I'm happy that we're getting a second one. I don't care if it's the last one. I have faith. And then also coming out of Comic-Con, I know we've talked crap before about Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. There's a new trailer that I actually think was pretty good. It got me a little bit excited. It seems a little bit overbloated, but I think...
I'm going to make a prediction for you.
Yeah?
Even having seen this trailer.
Yeah.
It's that Batman vs. Superman is going to have all the same problems that Avengers had.
Yeah, you think?
I think it's going to have action sequences that are too dark to follow. I think it's going to have too many characters, and I think that the female characters in it are going to be reduced to vague romantic interests and not actually get any real screen time.
But you have Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman,
which I'm excited about, because I really like Wonder Woman, and Gal Gadot looks great as Wonder Woman. But I think she will not be on screen nearly enough.
No, probably not. I don't know.
Also, why not just have the Wonder Woman movie? I would totally be more excited about a Wonder Woman.
Same reason we don't have a Hulk movie. No one cares. This is the truth of it.
Widow movie, for that matter.
Yeah. But I think this trailer does a much better job at selling the world. I'm at least more interested. I'll probably end up seeing it anyway, because it's probably going to be a big movie. Yada, yada, yada.
We're all going to end up seeing it. They know that we're going to
I know, that's the problem. That's the problem. They can put out whatever they want, however often they want, and we're going to see it. Just from that trailer, it sold me a little bit on Ben Affleck's Batman, or his Bruce Wayne. I think he did some good work just in the shots I took for the trailer of looking like a Bruce Wayne who's kind of been beat up by the world and is in awe that these freaking aliens with godlike strength are coming and blowing up city blocks with their eyes. So, I think there's some cool stuff there. So, I recommend watching the Batman vs. Superman Comic-Con trailer. I think they also did a smart thing. They were the only big trailer that came out of Comic-Con that actually first released an HD version and didn't complain that the fans were ruining stuff because you're pirating our trailers that we're showing. I don't know why we're so dumb that we think that we could just show a trailer here and it's not going to get leaked. Boo-hoo. Looking at you, Suicide Squad.
Oh, man. Don't even get me started. Well, I don't know enough about Suicide Squad to complain about it yet, but I'm sure I will.
We'll find reasons to complain. All right, Fliss, take us out.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for joining us here for the 11th episode of The Impact Factor. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a great episode for me. I got to really rock some social science stuff, which was fun.
Woohoo.
Anyway, thanks for hanging out. We really appreciate this. Please keep in touch. Talk to us on Twitter. You can find me at the CFliss. That's at THECFLISS. Also, check out my blog, Fliss of the North Star. This week's post was delayed because it was supposed to be just an update about what workouts I'm doing, and it turned into a discussion of how male bodies are portrayed in anime. So, tune in for
as
that
usual.
Tune in for that soon. I'll also be posting about festivals and about Japanese arcades. So there's some good stuff coming up. Come hang out and check that out at flissofthenorthstar.blogspot.com.
All right, everyone. 11 episodes in and 11 episodes in. All right, I got nothing. So thanks for spending some time with us. I'm a great host, aren't I? If you're hearing this now, chances are you found it on our SoundCloud. That's soundcloud.com/theimpactfactor. Please follow us there, reblog or whatever, or reshare, like our stuff. It really helps people find us. Also, please look us up on the iTunes store and subscribe there to get direct downloads of the episode each week. Rating us and writing a review there would do a lot for discoverability, so we'd really appreciate anyone who listens, even if you don't listen to it through iTunes, to go on there and leave a rating and write a review. We still don't have enough reviews to display reviews, so that's a little bit of a bummer. So please, if you're listening to this and you're listening all the way to the end, if you could do that for us, that'd be great. Or if you listen to us, send us an email at impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com to let me know that you did so I stop harassing you. So for an archive of our old episodes, as well as several the Impact Factor plays of Spelunky, check us out on YouTube by searching the Impact Factor video games or checking the link in the show description. The Impact Factor is an extension of my blog about video games, theimpactfactor.blogspot.com. Check there every Tuesday for a new review or article and every Friday for my curation of the best written pieces from the world of gaming. This Tuesday, I wrote a review about probably one of my favorite games I've played all year, Persona 4 Golden. It's exceptional. It's an amazing game. I recommend you go out and play it as soon as possible. So please check out my review there.
How many waifu do you have now?
I narrowed it down to one. I accidentally dated like 3 people, but I only meant to date one. So it's not just about that, man. It's not just about that.
You're a one waifu man?
I'm a one waifu man. That's what I'm saying. So please send any comments and suggestions for the podcast to impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Alex Samocha. That's Alex S-A Mocha, like the coffee. And until next time, make an impact.